Hi, and welcome to Musicians Edition. Today, we're going to be talking about flutes made more specifically for younger children. So most kids start the regular standard student flute at the age of 10. But what if your child wants to start flute before that? Holding the regular standard flute can feel very far and stretching for them. So let's check out some flutes. And I have a friend to help us out today to see how these flutes feel. Did you mind telling us how old you are and have you ever played the flute before?
I'm 9 years old and I have never played the flute.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this here is a regular flute. And your fingers go like thumb here, and they kind of just go down the line. You skip this one. Pinky goes on here and here. So if I'm handing this flute to you and you're holding it like the way I showed you, how does it feel? So it feels kind of big and far, right? Like kind of awkward, right? So this here is the regular student flute. Like I said before, to kids younger than 10, it usually feels like they're awfully far away. Now as an adult, it's not a big deal. It feels a little bit more comfortable for us because we can easily reach out. But to a kid, this would be like them playing like this. Really hard to hold. And that's why we have these other flutes tailored for younger kids. Okay, so this flute has the same kind of body, but has a different head joint. So if you had this flute, you could end up growing into this flute, meaning all you'd have to do is change the head joint as you get bigger. So try holding this one the same way. How does that feel? A little more comfortable? So the first flute we looked at is actually just a regular Yamaha student flute 222. Okay, and then what you do is you buy the head joint separately. What's great about the way this one works is when your student is young, you can put on the smaller head joint. Okay, and this makes it to where the flute is much closer to them. And this flute, since it's a regular student flute body and foot joint, that means as they get older and they get bigger, they can put the standard head joint on. And now they have a full student flute. No upgrading needed except for the upgrade starts from the beginning, just from that head joint. That also means they're going to be able to play the full entire range of the flute because we have all the keys, including this foot joint. We can hit all the way down to low C. As they get bigger, you just switch out the head joint. This is a great flute, and it's nice to be able to actually grow into your flute instead of having to buy a whole new entire flute. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next flute that we had looked at. So this flute is smaller, like the end here is not as much. So if you were to get this flute, you'd have to upgrade into a whole new flute as you got older. But go ahead and try to hold this one and see how it feels. So this one kind of guides you where your fingers go a little bit more. How does that one feel?
More comfortable.
More comfortable than those two? All right, the next flute we had looked at is the Zhao Mini. This flute is a little bit different than that last flute we saw, as it does not have the same foot joint. It has just the D key, so it cannot go all the way down to low C. It can only go down to low D. But as you're first learning, you're not going to hit that low C anyway. That's a little on later on down the road. And this flute here is only two parts. It's just the head joint and the body. That's it. Okay, and another thing I like about the Zhao Mini particularly is it has a little bit more of a guide on where your student should be placing their fingers and their thumb. So most flutes, you see this part here? There's this nub here. That's where the student places their thumb. If we go back to the regular flute does not have anything like that. So for your student who's very first learning, this is a great way to know where their thumb goes. And why I think that's really helpful, when I first was learning flute, I didn't know. I kind of just held the flute however was comfortable. And I ended up holding my flute like this, which limits mobility. You can't play as fast. So I had to relearn to put my thumb here. Here, your student is going to learn right off the bat that this is where their thumb goes. Also, taking a look at the keys, there's like these smaller keys right here with a little bit of a different color and a little bit of a different feel. They come up a little bit. Your student's going to know where their fingers go, okay? And same thing on this one, except they'll have to know that it comes here. But you'll know that you skip this key, because these finger guides help you. And once again with the thumb, and then the thumb keys in the back are the same way as the regular flute. So no need to worry there. So this flute's just gonna really help with proper hand placement. And with it being a smaller flute, it also helps them not feel so stretched out. This one is much closer to the body. It's going to make it a lot more comfortable for your student. Now the thing is, when your child gets a little bigger and grows, you're gonna have to buy a whole entirely new flute. This one does not grow with you. You cannot change the head joints out, and you'll need that foot, that C foot joint too. So that's the downfall on this flute, but great, really great if your student is 4, 5, 6. This flute is the flute I'm recommending to that age group. 9 years old, this one felt a little small for her, okay? She didn't need one this small. Let's go ahead and take a look at that last flute. And this one's kind of like an in-between size, so it has a neater looking head joint. So try this one and see how it feels. Now, how does that one feel? Better than that last one? Yeah, that last one's more for like someone who's like 4 or 5. So this one's probably more for your size. And the last flute we looked at was the Jupiter flute. And this one has a different kind of curved head joint. Now, this flute body is very similar to the Zhao Mini. It does not have the C foot joint like our standard flutes. So once again, as your child gets bigger, you're gonna have to upgrade the whole entire flute. This flute is 3 pieces though. You have the body, you have the curve, which is separate from the actual like mouth piece. Now the hard part is a lot of times we use just the head joints to make a sound, and there's not enough tubing here for your student to learn that way just on that. But as soon as you add this middle piece in, then you can. All right, and then it just fits together. Okay, now this flute is not a bad flute, and this one's gonna help. It depends on how much transition feeling you're gonna want your student to do, okay? Because this one, you know, I mean, it has the little keys. See, like it has the spots where you put your fingers, but it's not nearly as defined as the Zhao Mini. Like if I were just feeling it, it's not as pronounced, it's not as high, okay? I mean, you would still understand where to put your fingers, you'll get it. And then you don't have the thumb rest here, so your student might be playing like this, though their teacher should catch that, okay? And then that's gonna make the transition a little bit easier because your student flute's not gonna have this piece either. So if you started with the Zhao Mini, you're gonna have to get used to those guides going away. This one, you started with those guides away, you didn't even know they existed, you're gonna have a smoother transition going into the student flute. But this one's also a little bit longer than the Zhao Mini. So this one I would recommend more to a student who's maybe 7, 8, or 9. All right, so all the flutes play very beautifully, very wonderfully. It's just all about finding the flute that fits your child best when it comes to size, and how much of a transition that you'll really want them going into their very first young beginner flute into the student flute. Okay, now you're probably asking, where do I even find these flutes? Well, these flutes are a little bit harder to find, so more than likely you're not going to just find them at your local mom and pop shop music store, but I do know where you can get these, the Flute Center of New York. That's where all the flutes we have shown today came from, okay? Including the Yamaha. You can buy just the flute as a whole and then the head joint. Now that head joint does only go to the Yamaha, so please don't try putting that on any other flute you get. It's not going to work. You'd have to take it to a tech to get fitted, and at that point you might as well have just bought the Yamaha. All right, and another cool thing about the Flute Center of New York is you can even try these flutes before you buy them. Now I know it's a little harder to try a flute, especially if you're a student and your child has never played flute before. It's going to be hard to figure out sound. I wouldn't worry about that right now. I would just be testing out to see how they feel holding the flute. Do you feel like you're stretching, or do you feel too confined? You know, because that's how our guest had felt. I handed her the student flute, she felt too stretched. When I handed her the Zhao Mini, she felt too confined. But when she held the Jupiter, she felt the Jupiter was probably the most comfortable fit for her. So that's what you'll be looking for, is how comfortable does your child feel holding the flute? They should feel fairly comfortable, not stretched, not confined. So anyway, back to trying out these flutes so your kid can feel how the flute feels before you buy the flute. The Flute Center of New York ships them, and you can try them out for free. If you use the code REESA, R-E-E-S-A, shipping will be free. That means your whole trial process will be free. You'll get an extended trial period, and if you decide to buy a flute through the Flute Center of New York, you'll get an extended warranty as well. All right, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to you. While you're down there, don't forget to hit like, notify, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming flute-related content. Thanks for joining, and until next time.